All right, hello. We are here with Amanda Bybee, the CEO of the Amicus O&M Cooperative, and a good friend, and someone I've known since about, I'm trying to remember, 2017 or so. We met at one of the conferences in the Southeast, and I think you've been host of several conferences and moderator at this conference, and you're doing a lot of great things for the industry. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So tell us about the Amicus O&M Co-op. What do you do? What's your mission?
So the Amicus O&M Cooperative was founded in 2016 with the help of a grant from the Department of Energy's Sunshot Initiative. And the idea at the time was to help regional O&M service providers work together in a more consistent and standardized fashion in the way that they approach O&M services and to band together to service national portfolios. What we realized in 2016 was that it was still the Wild West. People were all over the place. There was no standard scope of work. Pricing was,
all over the map.
All over the map. So the cooperative set out to create a set of tools and templates that the member companies can use. So if a client is working with multiple of them, we look a little more coordinated.
Yeah.
That includes some software that the technicians can use when they actually go out in the field, follow the scope of work, take pictures, generate a report. But really the heart of a cooperative is the knowledge sharing. And so we do a lot to facilitate regular meetings and calls where member companies can interact with their counterparts all over the country.
Oh, that's my favorite part. I've been at a lot of the business development calls and being a mentor at this vintage I'm at, sharing knowledge, sharing expertise, and just hearing questions. And, I've solved those problems, or think I've solved those problems, and I can share my knowledge. It's really nice.
It's really the heart of it all, because in the service side of the solar industry, I find that service people are the nicest people on the planet. And so
problem solvers.
They're problem solvers. They want to take
happy.
care of customers and systems. And so it's a great way to get to know each other and help each other solve the problems on behalf of our collective customer base.
I will say you changed my personal behavior by being a member. I used to be much more close to the chest, keep my knowledge. This is my secret sauce of my success. But joining the co-op enabled me to be that mentor role and share, and it's just a different feeling. And it made me realize that the whole industry is growing, and there's a big enough pie for everybody playing that because it's growing so fast every year that there's, even though we're competitors, what do we call it? Ruthless cooperation.
It's actually a really interesting part of what I look for in a new member company is that intrinsic understanding that when we share, we stand to gain so much more than we could lose. And I think there's a foundational philosophy that some people have where they can't let go. They feel very closed and very, very hidden about stuff. But the fact of the matter is, what we're doing is not rocket science.
I was about to say the same thing.
Most of it is really honestly not even proprietary. What we're after is delivering good, solid service. And so
standardizing the way they behave and deliver.
But that willingness to share, that willingness to help each other is the fundamental nature of a cooperative, is to help each other do better together. And I think the fact that each of the member companies owns a share in the cooperative changes somewhat the dynamic among them on the call. Because you're not showing up as a client and a sub. You're showing up as peers, right? You're equal shareholders in that cooperative, and it's a different type of relationship when you're engaging with your partners and your peers, as opposed to it being hierarchical as a client. Provider.
When it started, how many member companies were there, and how many are there today?
So we started off with 20.
20, okay.
And we were born out of a sister cooperative called Amicus Solar Cooperative. They're a purchasing co-op.
So they leverage the communal buying power to get better deals from all the OEMs.
Exactly. And so when we first got started, it was Amicus Solar was actually the lead on that grant that we got in 2016. And so a number of the member companies there were bought in right away. So we started out with 20 member companies. Some of them have actually exited the O&M space or exited solar since then, but so there's been a little bit of two steps forward, one step back. But today we are 36 active member companies.
Spectacular.
And membership interest has never been higher.
Right.
We could add 12 new companies this year.
Wow.
Which would be
Have you met a lot of them here at the show?
A handful of them are here, yeah.
Got it.
But it's also interesting. We started out thinking that we would predominantly serve C&I and utility scale customers. And we've since actually added a pretty sizable and well-attended residential track because a lot of our companies also service residential customers. And as we've continued to see attrition affecting the residential segment, there are a lot of orphan systems that need help, as you well know.
We know that very well.
I know you know that. So residential companies don't tend to come to the show, but there's a lot of interest there. And I'm personally really excited to help a lot of these companies figure out how to make their service departments meaningful contributors to their company profit. Because a lot of them have struggled to figure that out. And I feel like this is one of the values that the cooperative can bring, is teaching them how to achieve profitability for their service departments.
Yeah, Omnidian participates in Amicus. I'm actually on the board with you, and
grateful for that.
value the role I have there. What's interesting is trying to decide who the new members will be. Is it overlap or density within a region? Do you let green companies in who know nothing about O&M, or do you have only experienced companies? And how are we tackling those challenges?
So, joining the Amicus O&M Cooperative is not a foregone conclusion. There is a vetting process that every company has to go through before we would let them in the door.
Right.
And we do weigh these questions of, like, how saturated is a given service area by other member companies.
Right.
However,
do you have overlap?
There is absolutely overlap, and I really come at this question from an abundance mentality, because nobody has the market completely cornered in any given geographic area with all the service work that needs to be done. We have so much work to do. And I actually see benefits to having some overlap, because when you're partners and when you've established a level of trust in each other's work quality, if you get in a pinch and an inverter goes down and you can't pull somebody off because they're already deployed, but you could call your partner and they could maybe help you out. Like, there's value in that redundancy that you can't maybe feel quite as confident in doing so if you don't have a pre-existing relationship with the company or nearby.
Right. And we look to use partners whenever we're deploying as well. It's like a nice synergy there. So what are the biggest issues we're facing with O&M these days? What keeps you up at night or keeps the industry struggling at this point?
Yeah, so we did a survey a few years ago and asked this question to the companies. What are your biggest challenges? What is hindering your growth? And the number one answer that came back was hiring enough trained and experienced technicians.
Right.
And everyone loves to hire experienced installers and electricians from adjacent trades, but the truth is there's not enough of them.
Right.
And when there are not enough of them, you have to take the long view and you have to be willing to train them.
Exactly.
So we started working on building out a cooperative level training program a few years ago. But we reached a certain point in the development of that, and we realized that we needed to expand our vision and our view of that. So in 2022, I submitted another grant to the Department of Energy, and we were awarded the funding last year.
Yay.
To work on standardizing, training, credentialing, and developing the workforce of solar O&M technicians. And as part of that work, we've really expanded our reach into a much broader stakeholder advisory committee, where we've tried to engage a host of different types of perspectives. We have most of the major third-party O&M providers at the table.
Even at the utility scale.
As well. They're not member companies, but they're a part of this segment in our industry. And so we're trying to reach out to them and really build consensus well beyond the borders of the cooperative and affect the industry at large. And so I'm working closely with a stakeholder advisory committee that's got over 50 companies on our email list to develop a universal technician competency framework so that we all use the same language when we talk about a level 1 technician
and
or
the
level
same
2
qualifications and training techniques and scopes of work that they're capable of doing, all of the above.
And then now that we've got a nascent alignment around this framework, we're starting to work on expanding our training program to align with these levels. And I'm also working closely with the trade associations who SEIA, the Solar Energy Industries Association, as well as American Clean Power, or ACP, they're ANSI accredited, meaning American National Standards Institute.
Right.
They're going to publish standards around this, which will have more
generally
gravity.
the same framework, but with a little more gravitas and formality to it. Right?
Exactly, yeah. So I think this work really stands to benefit not only the Amicus O&M Cooperative member companies, but really everyone in this space.
Yeah.
And I think the labor shortage is the number one issue. We have so much work to do. And that's on the existing base of installed systems. Not to mention the astronomical growth we're going to see.
I mean,
of which we have a lot of job security, Ben.
Oh, I know we do.
A lot of job security.
I tell my son he should get an electrician's license. So
I have my 10-year-old there. His plan is to work at an ice cream shop, and then a restaurant, and then to become a solar maintenance electrician. All the whispering in his ear has worked.
That's right. He loves ice cream and he wants to do solar.
Yep.
You've trained him well.
Yeah. But the other aspect of this that I don't want to overlook is our grant is actually called Advancing Equity Through Workforce Partnerships. And this concept of advancing equity, which is really access to these jobs, is very important to me. We need to broaden the tent of the benefits of solar, the workforce, the employment as well as the deployment of solar. And so making sure that we are designing programs that specifically welcome in entry-level workers. That's part of the innovation of our program, is that we are not just looking for the really experienced installers and electricians. We want to be able to welcome in entry-level workers from all walks of life.
Underserved communities that may not traditionally be in some of the construction trades. Yeah.
And we want to bring them straight into O&M. They don't necessarily have to go through the several years as an installer before they can get a job as an O&M technician. Right.
What I've always loved about the operations side of solar is the troubleshooting aspect. It's very different. The install, you rinse, repeat 1,000 times. You put another module in, but you need to use your brain as well as your brawn to figure out what's gone wrong and then implement the solution while you're out there.
Yeah.
And you can use that. So there are definitely people who enjoy that aspect of it. And
those are migrate
to it. Yeah. Those are our people.
Those are our people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what else I got. All right. So of the member companies, how do we get them more engaged? I know that's been something you've brought up. Like we have, monthly calls with different parts of the org. We have technicians on some calls, business development on others, residential, commercial. How can we get these 36 companies to not just have like the same two people on the calls all the time? What do you recommend there?
One of the philosophies that I adhere to within the cooperative is that everything that we do and everything that we offer to the member companies is opt-in. So I don't have a hard and fast rule about what you have to do when you join. You don't have to use the tools that the cooperative provides, but they're pretty good. And if they're an improvement over what you're currently using, they're available to you. The same is true with member meetings. I don't keep track and issue demerits if you don't attend to calls. Good thing for you. But I do.
I try.
I do feel like it's incumbent on me to make sure that the topics that we discuss are relevant and timely and so juicy that people don't want to miss the calls.
Right. We had you come to our company and do a Zoom meeting with everybody. That was great. People really loved you. I unfortunately missed it, but I'll watch the recording. So those kind of things are really helpful for everybody. Okay.
But I think that is it, right? Once people start coming and start to experience the value of the knowledge share that takes place and the relationship building and the problem solving, and I think there's frankly a huge opportunity for Omnidian to engage with partners and to bring forward, you're the tip of the spear in terms of the customer interactions. Y'all hear it first.
Right.
And so when you hear issues from customers, this is a tremendous opportunity to come and engage with your partner companies and say, hey, this is what we're hearing. How can we collectively address this?
Or has anyone else experienced this, and how have you solved that? Yeah, we've done Probably more of that than the former, but yeah, I agree.
But I think that's a big opportunity, and one of the things that we're excited about having Omnidian as part of the cooperative is engaging at that peer level. You know, Omnidian holds the national contracts, and so you have that direct interaction with the customers, whereas many of the other companies are the field service providers.
And more regional based, yeah.
But they don't have quite the same visibility to the landscape that you do.
Right.
And so this is a real opportunity to engage in a bidirectional conversation and address these issues. You don't have to solve everything by yourselves,
right?
And neither do they.
It was interesting. The panel you hosted yesterday was on prevailing wage in the IRA, and it was even funny. It felt like the answer was still evasive when we were there. Like, what projects need to have prevailing wage? Which parts of the scope need it? And even then, one of the follow-up questions was, what was the answer? So you want to give the answer?
Yes.
Yeah, in plain English. You want to try again?
I tried to help boil it down, but the fact of the matter is there are still questions like that are not answered. There's a lot of gray in that.
Right. And as the IRS... The woman from Maggie from the IRS said, that's intentional.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I found myself grappling with that a little bit because I want a clear black and white answer as to how we apply the rules so that everyone does it the same way. It is a level playing field. And we're clearly compliant because I do earnestly believe that most companies want to do the right thing. They want to be compliant. They want to adhere to the spirit and letter of the law.
Right.
However, there's a lot of gray, and getting comfortable with gray is challenging because gray also represents liability and potential penalties if we do something incorrectly.
So the other aspect of the IRA and the prevailing wage law that you enlightened me on was that it does lift up basically the lowest paid people in the industry, and by lifting all that up, the companies who are installing these projects are getting a huge tax break, and that money should be reinvested back into the lowest paid people. And now they will hopefully get a living wage, they'll stay in the industry, all of the above. And thank you for that. I appreciated that perspective.
Well, I think that in so many words, I think it is the intention of the law to make prevailing wages the wage of the land. And with O&M, the application of this is a little trickier because not only are we contending with systems that are being installed now with the advantage of that additional tax credit to help offset some potentially higher labor costs, but we have all these legacy contracts. And it's hard because there's going to have to be a backwards adjustment as well. Yeah.
The wages are going to come up, and you need to bring the regular wage up to meet the prevailing wage almost. That's kind of happening on its own.
And if you're paying, Tony the tech prevailing wages on this site, but the next day you want to send them to an older site where you're paying a lower wage. At some point, Tony's going to say, you know what? I don't think I want to do that.
Right.
Plus, we see competition from the installation side of it, which is also prevailing wage based. So we are going to have to do something to retain talent, and that something is going to be normalizing the wages at prevailing wages.
And
otherwise, we'll lose.
Upward mobility there.
Which is ultimately a great thing.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I think this is where the level playing field is important, because if you're doing that, but this other company over here isn't, then that puts you at a disadvantage.
Right.
But if everybody in the industry has to make that same adjustment and levelize it, then it's okay, right? It's all in the same.
The shock of that happening is across the industry, exactly.
Yeah. And if I have learned anything in my 21 years in solar, it is that we can adapt to anything.
Yeah.
And everybody, you feel a shock of having to adjust your labor rates, and it's hard and it's painful, and no one wants to spend more money, we know. But at the same time, we can factor this in, we can adjust to it, and it will benefit our workers and, frankly, the technicians who are on the front lines doing the work to keep this technology up and running. So they should make more.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to venerate them as really the true, shining knights of the industry, because it's
fighting the battle for renewable energy out front. Yeah.
And if you get all the solar installed, but then it breaks and stays offline, it does us no good. Then it's just shiny, paperweights.
Right.
So.
And I guess a last question for you: if you had a magic wand and you could have a big audacious wish granted, what would it be for both, either Amicus or the industry or both, or you? I think you got one of them. You got your first employee.
Yes, that's been a big milestone.
Yeah.
I think my wish would be to see O&M work be more highly valued throughout the whole development chain, because what we, the thing that we typically see is that the developers and financiers, plug in a number.
Yeah.
For O&M services.
When a spreadsheet can do it for this number, why doesn't your technician follow the same path? Yeah.
But sometimes they just make this number up, and it's not really based in the reality.
Right.
And I think it sets us up to have this ongoing and persistent tension between the owners and the O&M providers that will always be there, but it would be really nice for that to just loosen up a little bit and to allow O&M providers to pay their people better, to make a little bit more profit, and to take care of their employees in a more holistic way, so that it's, that tension will always exist. That's, tale as old as time. But I think to see O&M services be more highly valued, have a little bit of additional wiggle room, would ensure that the infrastructure that we're currently building out really fulfills its promise as a clean and reliable source of energy. And the fact that it's constantly undervalued and underpaid means that we aren't maintaining it as responsibly as we would like to on the O&M side. Right. So that would be my big wave the magic wand wish, is just to push that perception upstream.
Well, I have a surprise thank you gift for you, which I think you've been asking for, and it's not this book, but this is one of them.
Ooh.
It's an Almidian embossed book. But
that's beautiful.
The real surprise is an Almidian backpack that you've been asking me for at least a couple of years now. So there you go.
Thank you. Fantastic. Now I can track the pack.
You can track the pack, and we can follow. There's a chip embedded in there that lets us know where you are at all times.
Okay. Big brother.
Well, it's always a pleasure to hang out, and I love seeing you at conferences, and I look forward to seeing you at the retreat in a couple of weeks.
Indeed.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Cool.